Number one is if you move, even if you're managing a large-scale division of a big company, you've still got to go through this process, and it's developing a business owner mindset. What you have to realize is that when you buy into a business, you start a business by yourself, you now have an entity that is separate from you. Even if you're the one doing all the stuff.
That's the business.
That's the business model. And you've got to be able to look at it as a separate entity from you. And you've got to be able to spend the time thinking about how you're going to grow it, what expansion you want to get to.
How you're going to make it better.
How you're going to make it
more
better.
Efficient.
You've got to do all that stuff while you're servicing what you're in business to sell.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then all you end up being is an employee of yourself. And that, you know, that might feel good at the time, but it's got limiting prospects down the road.
Well, and if you bought a franchise, you paid a lot of money to be an employee.
Absolutely, and I did. You know, early on, I did that.
So, I know that model. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you know, happily, I was able to figure out how to transform myself out of that. But you have to start thinking differently about business. What is the business there to do? Well, the business is there to make money. You know, it can provide a lot of other great services that other people get value out of, but it's got to make money. If it doesn't make money, you got an expensive hobby. And
yeah, I tell you, why have a business if you're not going to make money? I mean, you could go do whatever you want and help people and get a lot of satisfaction. You can do it a lot easier for free.
Right.
Right. But we start a business because we want to make money.
Right. Okay, so that was number one. Number two, get a really good handle on the flow of the finances and what things cost money in your business. I actually did some research about 5 years ago, and I ran across a study that was done by Dun & Bradstreet. And they were trying to address this question of why do we have such a high failure rate of business in this country. You know, I mean, business is the backbone of this country, but it's still at a 50% level. Mm-hmm. 1 out of every 2 people that decides to get into it is not going to stay in it.
That might be even higher than I think it's 50, 60, 70% of people don't make it past the 5-year mark.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. Within the first couple of years, you're that, but the longer they stay into it, the higher the number goes.
Yeah.
And so what was high on the list was number one on the list was people just didn't understand business. Okay, you're operating in a different field. But I think number 3 on the list was not having a good command of finances. And when you're making all the decisions, you know, it's easy when you're working for a company, you've got a great idea and you need the company to invest in it. So you put a proposal together and you go to the powers that be and you make your best pitch, and what you're really hoping is they're going to sign it away and give you the money and let you run with it. Okay, you're not having to make that decision. You're all wrapped up in, can I sell this idea to the people above me? Well, when you're running the business, you're the one making that decision about where that money's going. And a lot of people that aren't comfortable with making financial decisions, which have to be made black and white, you can't let a lot of emotion cloud your judgment. If you run off the rails there, it's going to be an ugly situation. And so what I tell people is get control of your finances. Figure out what it's going to cost you to start that business up. I had a lady contact me from a coaching site that I'm a member of, and she said, how much money should I be putting away in order to start this business? And I said, you know, tell me about it. And she did. And I said, you need to figure out how to self-fund for at least 18 to 24 months, because that's how long it's going to take you to get the organization developed and get to the point where you can start generating revenue and paying for things out of the revenue you generate. So unless you want to be obliged to venture capitalists or banks or things like that, you need to have a cushion. You need to understand what it's going to cost you to get off the ground. So that's what I tell people, really be comfortable with financial
business owner
numbers.
mindset, being comfortable with finances. What else?
Get comfortable with risk.
Okay.
Everything you do in business has got a risk factor to it. The people that I have been privileged to meet and learn along my own journey that were extraordinarily successful at building their own empires had a completely different approach to looking at risk. Most of the time, if you play a word association game with somebody and you say, tell me what comes to mind when I throw a word out there, and you throw out risk, the first thing they'll say is loss. Somehow they've associated taking a risk with losing something.
And not with opportunity.
Right. And the guys that are super successful at playing in the game that they've gotten into, they don't see risk that way. They look at risk like these poker guys that you see on these tournaments in Vegas. If I want the big pot, I have to ante up. That doesn't mean I'm going to get that money back every hand, but if I don't keep anteing up, the game's over.
Right, right. And if I don't make the investment in the first place, there's no return. I mean, I think
Right.
business is really all about investments with returns on that investment.
Right.
Now, you don't always know what they are. Brian Tracy, I had dinner with him one time, it's so funny, he says, in an entrepreneur, you make an investment, right? And you make a bet, essentially, on what you think is going to happen, and then you work your little fanny off to make it happen.
That's right. And you know what? I mean, it should be a calculated risk. You should be doing a certain amount of research and understanding what you're getting into so that you know that the chips are more in your favor than not.
Yeah, you're measuring the odds, right? We're not going to take silly risks.
But you have to be comfortable with the idea that not everything's going to work, but there's benefit out of every end result. Even if you fail at something, learning what you did that caused that so you can make a course correction, there's value in that too.
Yeah, well, let's say failure is is maybe the best learning tool out there.
Right.
'Cause
Well,
we definitely get it when we make a mistake and we fail.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, so you've got having a business owner mindset, understanding finances, being able to take risk, and then the very last thing is, and we talked about this earlier, understand marketing. Understand how that whole thing plays into you growing and sustaining a business. Because marketing and sales are the only two activities you'll engage in that actually generate revenue. Everything else is a support function. Absolutely.
Absolutely right.
So if you're not comfortable with it, if you don't understand it, if you don't have the ability to look at how to connect yourself with the people that want your service, and you don't understand the role that marketing plays in there, you will get very aggravated, you will spend a ton of money and lose a lot of time experimenting with stuff that probably was never designed to work for the kind of business model you have set.